The beauty of a to-do list that will never be completed. All right, guys, we're back with another This is Easy podcast, one podcast a day. And I have to be honest with you, I've had a mindset shift that, when we put all of this pressure on ourselves that I gotta get it done. And when I get it done, then I'll feel better. Or, how do I do this? How do I do that? And it's interesting because this whole, one podcast a day thing, I've been getting really good feedback. And mind you, my monkey mind is going crazy of like, did I just put that shit out into the world? But I wanted to talk today about something this little aha moment that I had at CrossFit. And this is part of the reason why I like physical activity so much is because I learn so much through my physical learning. I'm very kinesthetic learner, very visual. So, when I visually see something, I have light bulb moments. And when I'm learning it through my body and through my mind, I have those moments as well. And today, while I was working out, I was doing this skier, and it's kind of like a rower, where you pull on these strings down and you look ridiculous. I'm doing it, and the coach walks up to me and he's correcting me. And he's like, Heather, push your butt in, do this. And like, when you get to the top, take a breath and whatever. And then, as I'm going. And then this other coach walks by, and then she's correcting me in a different way. And I'm continuously trying, right? I'm trying to do what they're telling me to do. And, they're giving me this feedback, and it's very humbling, because the second you think you're perfect at something or you're good at it, you will have your ass handed to you when you have somebody who's better or more skilled than you give you feedback, because we're constantly evolving during this process as being human. And so this is my aha moment was your to-do list will never be done. Never. It will never be completed. And I'll tell you why. Because the second you feel like, okay, I've crossed everything off the list for today, your brain, your ego, your mind will bring in the next set of tasks that need to be completed, because the work is never done. Your work as a mother is never done. Your work as an employee or a business owner is never done. Your work as a wife, your work as a friend, a sister, a brother, like your work is never done as a human being, because we are created to create. That is part of our process here on earth. And so when I talk to women who have been out of the workforce, or, they're like, I want more, but I feel bad. Like I should just, being a mother isn't enough. And my point to that is we were here to create. It doesn't matter if you are man or woman. We are here to create and evolve. And back in the day, when women would stay home and men would go out and hunt and all of that fun stuff, the women didn't just take care of the children. They did way more shit that is just not available to us today. Like on your, farming and gardening and all of that fun stuff. Like we were working. Maybe it was at home, but we were like making dresses and like doing all of that domesticated shit that I have absolutely no skills in anymore. But the point of what I'm trying to say is we're more than, a baby maker. We are here to evolve. We are here to create, and your to-do list will never be complete, and you will never be good enough for some other people. And that sounds like an awful analogy for me to say, but the point is, I have to be good enough for myself, right? So when I go to the gym or anywhere else, and the gym is just a metaphor, like you show up and you do the work for that day in that moment, and you say to yourself, this is enough. This is enough. And in the back of my mind, I could say, oh, I didn't, next time I got to do this or I got to do that. Or I could just let all that shit go and I go, I did good today. Like I showed up, right? Like, yeah, it took me till 5:00 p.m. to get there when I could have went all day because it was an open day for me. And I could have did that, but I didn't. And so just showing up some days is beyond good enough. It's perfect. So that's my message for you today, is that your to-do list will never be complete. Never, never, ever, ever, ever. Because the second it's complete, you're going to be thinking about the next project, the next task, the next thing that you can do. And so this comes back to the belief of, I am enough. I am good enough. And how we cultivate and create our lives and actually steal our joy by not creating boundaries around these things. And what I'm being called to share with you right now is a story about my grandmother and a memory that I have as a little girl of her. So I grew up in a family, an entrepreneurial family, and a family business that my grandparents ran. My dad was involved. My stepmother was involved. It was my first job. And so my grandma was a working woman, and not a working woman. She worked within the business, and she would take care of the accounting and all of that stuff and, the back end stuff. And so I would help her all the time. My tasks were absolutely useless, but not useless, but I would stuff envelopes back in the day when there was no email addresses, and we would mail out all these brochures and everything. So I would stuff 5,000 brochures into envelopes and lick them or use those. This was even before those little sponges were invented. And I'm surprised I didn't die of all the toxins in that shit. But I would use, and then after the sponges came out. So that was part of my job. And then I did have other useless tasks that I know they just gave me to try to keep me safe and what do you call it? Busy. But I loved hanging out with my grandma, and I would work next to her, and I'd have my little desk, and I would be her little sidekick, and I kind of labeled myself as her little assistant. And she's like, "You were the greatest little assistant." And I remember her telling me one day, "Heather, one day when all of my, to-do lists, all of my tasks are complete, I'll take you to Toys R Us." And as a little kid, it's you don't promise something to a little child because then they're going to be like, oh, it's going to come true, right? And that day never came. That day, to this day, that day never came where my grandmother brought me to Toys R Us because her work was never done. Never done. And I remember one day though, and she didn't say it to me. We were in a group of people, and she had this moment of I'm caught up. And in my brain, because I didn't say this to her out loud, I go, "Oh, good. That means we're going to Toys R Us." And I just thought to myself, okay, when she is caught up, then we will go to Toys R Us. And that day came, and she never brought me to Toys R Us because her other to-do lists came, right? She goes, "Oh, well, I'm caught up today, but then more stuff's going to come in tomorrow." So my point to this whole story, and as I'm telling you the story, I'm thinking of my grandma, and I love her dearly, and I call her every week, and she's like a little angel. So I'm not gonna tell her that story. Maybe I'll take her out to Toys R Us or something like that, and I'll be like, "Grandma, let me buy you a toy," and she'll laugh at me. So my point to this is, where in your life are you saying someday? I will when? When the house is perfectly clean, then I will. When I lose the weight, then I will. When we have, this is the big one, when we have this much money, then I will. And what I have experienced in my own life is when you start living that essence in the moment, this is when the freedom comes. This is when the joy comes. So let's just use my example. If my grandma said, "You know what? My work is never going to be complete, but I'm going to hustle today, and tomorrow or next week, let's put it on the calendar. You and I will go to Toys R Us." And then we go to Toys R Us, right? And going to Toys R Us, you don't need to spend $100. It could be $10, $5. It's the essence of the memory. And as a grown adult, we can all think back on moments in our life. And I know that I've probably ruined my children's lives and memories at some point or the other. And that's kind of what we do as adults. We're not perfect, right? But as long as you can say sorry, that's okay. So where in your life can you kind of say, "You know what? I keep saying when. Let's just do it now." And maybe, yes, it's not going to be this big grand thing, but it's good enough. Where can be your good enough moment that you can create now. So that's my aha moment for you guys. That's it. That's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening. I am loving these podcasts a day. This is easy, but I want to know, do you have a question for me that you would like me to talk about, or maybe a story I can share around something? Send it in. support@heatherchauvin.com.